Okay. Want to kind of sort of preview SEC Media Days?
Talking
We're a
season.
few days talking season. Yeah. SEC Media Days begin Monday, downtown Dallas. Here's the rundown of events roughly. Monday, it's going to be LSU, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, as well as SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. Tuesday is going to be Georgia, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Mizzou. Wednesday is going to be Alabama, Mississippi State, Florida, and Texas. Thursday is going to be Arkansas, A&M, Auburn, and Kentucky. When Alabama goes on Wednesday, we'll feature head coach Kalen DeBoer, as well as quarterback Jalen Milroe, offensive guard Tyler Booker, free safety Malachi Moore. Any preliminary or initial thoughts, or dare I say complaints, on the 4-day event, what to expect, the unofficial start of the 2024 season, Alex?
Yeah, the complaint is that it's 4 days. It should just be 3. I mean, 4 days is insane, as somebody used to have to cover it wall to wall. I mean, how many people are going to be left by Thursday when it's Auburn and South and Kentucky rolling around? It's just
Well, A&M will be there in the morning, so
yeah, it's strategic how they do those things, right? So yeah, it'll be. I'm curious. It's a long week. I'm just glad they didn't add an extra day to it when Texas and Oklahoma got in. I mean, the Texas Oklahoma storyline is going to be the biggest one. Just the official "you're in it now" deal. But from the Alabama point of view, the 3 players were the right players for them to choose. They're not going to surprise anybody. I don't think they're not going to say something they're not supposed to. And oh, by the way, they're 3 of their best players. Now, would we selfishly have loved to have heard from like a newcomer, like a Jeremy Bernard or a Parker Brailsford, who could talk about the experience at Washington and now at Alabama and bridge that gap? Absolutely. But at the same time, it is what it is. You can only send 3 players. What'll be interesting to me is, are we just going to get the same questions asked of Kalen DeBoer that we've seen all off season? Is it still going to be, are you crazy for following Nick Saban? What are expectations year 1? And Milroe, like those are the 3 big things. And we know how he'll handle those. Will he get a little bit of heat put on him? I don't know. I don't really expect that'll happen. But from the Alabama perspective, pretty much what I thought it was going to look like.
What are you most hoping to learn from SEC Media Days?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know how much there ever is to learn, to be honest with you. It's more hoping that something interesting happens. And it's kind of those things, like if Lane doesn't provide the fireworks, who's going to? And I'm glad Lane's going day one, because maybe he can make a little bit of news that then everybody sort of has to respond to. It'll be interesting to hear how the Lane, Sark, the former Alabama contingent Kirby will talk about Nick being gone and whether that they view the conference differently. And, we had the VIP roundtable earlier in the week, and the guy I said I was most interested in hearing from was Kirby. And not because of Georgia's standing as, the front runners to reach the national championship game yet again, but because of the fact that I know Kirby's not technically the elder statesman. I think it's Stoops at this point, but he's the most visible face in the SEC now, now that Nick Saban's gone. And does he fill that void, that unique void that Saban leaves behind in terms of being a proxy for the conference and being a voice for all of college football in saying, hey, this is what I think is good. This is what I think is not good. And then everybody sort of responds to that. I don't know if Kirby's built to want to do that. But it'll be interesting to see if he sort of adjusts and embraces that a little bit, because those kind of questions are going to come his way now, because somebody has to speak to him, and I think it's going to be him.
I guess my thought is maybe either Kirby or Sark. I don't know why, but I feel like Sark is in a unique position, as close as he was to Saban. Like Saban thought of him as the potential heir to the Alabama throne, so to speak, until Texas came calling. Like, could Sark be maybe not the voice, but at least a voice at that table, like in that conversation? Like maybe it's a Sark Kirby tandem thing where it's just like, let's ask Kirby and Sark the same question. Let's see how, what they think. Are they on the same page? Are they thinking differently? Like for whatever reason, I feel like those are the 2 dudes that probably going to look to as like, all right, when it comes to the state of college football, their opinion matters maybe a little bit more than everybody else's, at least until somebody maybe ascends to that seat.
And there's a willingness to give the opinion, especially from Sark, that I think more so than Kirby's at times, because Kirby can just give you, it's all about ball and shut out the noise. Not to say he won't ever address big issues, but Sark seems a little bit more willing to do that. It's just a matter of it's your first year in the SEC. You're going to be viewed
Yeah.
a little bit differently, whereas Kirby can come at it from the perspective of being part of this conference for shoot. I mean, if you go back to his assistant days, we're talking about almost 2 decades.
Well, shoot, you can go all the way back to his playing days too. Like he was
Yeah,
a pro
exactly.
player. Yeah.
So there's that sort of breadth of career. So yeah, it'll be interesting to me to see that. Yeah, and then from the player perspective, who's gonna give us a little bit of a soundbite? Will we get a little bit of feeling their oats from Georgia as the prohibitive favorite? What will we hear from LSU about Nussmeier stepping in? Oklahoma, and who's their rival now outside of Texas? Who's that secondary rival? And then the question everybody wants to ask. Normally, the head of officiating goes on the stage, and half the reporters leave the room. Head of officiating is going to go on the stage, and every reporter is going to have their butt in a seat, waiting to ask about horns down, because that is going to be, mark my words, the highest traffic story to come out of media days will be: is it a penalty to do horns down? And then
God, I hope not. I really hope not.
and then it'll be the Texas players reacting to that in their, and I won't want to speak for the players, but the Texas perspective of the pettiness and thinking it's like the worst insult in the whole world. But yeah, if you followed Big 12 media days the last 10 years, that question was asked almost every single year. So it will be asked again, and it'll have to be finally a new answer. And I hope the answer is it's fine. Texas is going to have to deal with it.
Welcome to the SEC, big fellas. The other, I mean, this is a beautiful part about the schedule too. Texas goes Wednesday, and then A&M goes Thursday, because you know that there's some animosity, a lot of animosity between Texas and A&M, right? So whatever happens with Texas, hopefully that question gets asked on Wednesday. They're also going to circle back on Thursday and be like, all right, this isn't a penalty. How often are you guys going to do this in that season finale matchup, right? Like that they're going to egg them on and poke that bear a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. It's gonna. We talked. There was a thread on the board at one point about rivalries, and I do think the Texas A&M rivalry is going to reignite in an insane way. I think it's huge. There's so much animosity that's been built up between those two programs over decades, and the fact that they're finally going to be able to play one another now and respond to one another within the same conference. As in-state neighbors, I can't wait to see the kind of things that come up, and whether Sark says anything remotely interesting about Texas A&M, how they respond to that, and then vice versa. Cannot wait for that piece of it.
Who do you think will provide the most viral soundbite out of SEC Media Days?
Probably Lane, but there's that low energy Lane that happens sometimes where he gets on a stage and I don't know if he just got up from a nap or if he's like, this is his way of not stepping into the spotlight because he feels like sometimes he shouldn't do that. But he is the guy who not only will he say anything, he actually does think about these issues about like NIL, the transfer portal. He does come at it from a unique perspective, I think. So I could see him sort of giving that soundbite. And also, you never know, maybe he'll throw a self-deprecating Nick Saban story out there. He's got to have a million of them that he has not told yet. So maybe he'll get up there and do us a favor with that. But I think it's got to be Lane.
I'm selfishly hoping that one of the Saban disciples, to give them kind of a name, right? Either Lane or Kirby or Sark or somebody gives us something about Saban, right? There's also a part of me that's, to a much lesser extent, I hope Saban will actually be there and he has to hang out with us media folks and, Nick Saban, ESPN, hey coach, I got a question. Like I know I've cracked that joke before, but like, I just think that'd be hilarious. But I also hope that I know that those guys are going to be asked about it because just the specter of Saban being gone, but not totally gone yet, is going to be kind of one of those weird hovering subplots over the week. And in our case at Alabama, over the course of the entire season, especially if and when game day comes to town, right? Like he's going to be there. So I hope that maybe the soundbite, whether it's Lane, whether it's Sark, whether it's Kirby, I think that's probably the power ranking if you're gonna, who's gonna do it.
I think there's a decent chance that Saban is going to be the guy to provide the most interesting soundbite, depending on how visible he's going to be on the telecast. And that's going to be the one of the more interesting things. There's those weird moments where there's a coach talking. I don't know how the setup's going to be in Dallas, but in Hoover, where a coach is literally talking at the podium, and then 30 yards away in the same conference room is the SEC network setup where they're live on air. So
Like live
I
reacting to what they're saying.
I want to imagine Nick Saban hearing Lane Kiffin in the background tell a story he doesn't like, ripping off the headset and saying, I'm going to tell my version here. Maybe that's how we get
A couple more SEC Media Day questions I got for you, Alex. Who do you believe will be the SEC Media Day's MVP?
Sark. I think because of what we talked about before in terms of his willingness to engage on topics. I hope somebody asks them about all the Lamborghinis they roll out for recruiting. I know why they do it. I just think it's funny. And then the newness in the conference. Got to be one of the new coaches that's going to be the headliner and deliver. And I just don't think it's going to be Venables. Which,
No,
by the way, watch for Venables to be the best filibuster possible. He gives the longest answers you've ever heard. We may get 3 total questions in his time at the podium. So I think it'll be Sark because we get a Saban story maybe in there. We get the newness of the conference. We get the Quinn Ewers thing. We get the fact that they're national championship contenders. I think all of that in the bucket, he's got the chance to be the guy who has the most attention on him.
Yeah, if you were to set Vegas odds at SEC Media Day's MVP, I think Sark is the heavy favorite. I think Lane, for various reasons, could also be pretty high up on that board. I'm curious. I don't, just because of maybe his demeanor, at least the way that I understand his demeanor, I would like to think that Elko could be up there, but again, his demeanor probably lowers his odds. Same thing, like with what version of Kirby we're going to get. He's normally pretty boring. DeBoer, at least us in this space, we've heard enough from him that we think we know what he's going to say. Sark seems like the early front runner, but also like, could Lane steal the show? Potentially. He goes on day one. Like he could at the very least steal day one.
Yeah. But I could also, again, low energy Lane might come out and decide I'm not going to make any headlines this year, which we know that won't last. It will not last.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Because he will, if he doesn't make them in Dallas, he will tweet something on the way home from Dallas that'll get everybody talking, or he'll stop at Arby's and pull a spur. I don't know what it'll be, but he'll find a way. It's just a matter of whether he does it in front of us or in another circumstance.
What question do you want answered at SEC Media Days that you do not plan on asking?
That I don't plan on asking. Oh,
there's some. Pardon my French. I've been watching a lot of the Euro, but there's a lot of weird shit that gets asked at SEC Media Days. So
yeah, it depends on how weird it gets, right? Like, I mean, there's part of me that wants to know more from Sark on whether there was any allure to come back to Alabama, whether Kirby even engaged with the question, if it even got to his desk. You want to go back to Alabama? No, I'm at my alma mater. We're rolling. It's not going to happen. I'd love to know an unfiltered Jalen Milroe and just ask him every question under the sun, but he's set up to do things a little bit differently because there is that thing like, how much are you still that guy who's got a chip on your shoulder from not just the way the season ended, but almost the way it began for him? Because there's a way of looking at it like his season began with a Texas loss in terms of national stage and then being benched. And, how he really feels about it. It's just hard part is getting the unvarnished answer out of him. The hard one to ask that I'd love to, again, and a guy you'd love to have a beer with is Sam Pittman and ask him about Petrino. And what, did you have to do this or did you really want to do this? Because you're bringing in a guy who, if the first time something goes wrong, people will be saying, replace him with Petrino because they still love him there. And the awkwardness of it's a head coach in waiting that the head coach doesn't know is in waiting or he knows. And how do you handle the public relations piece of it. Do you have when does he talk to the media? Does more media go to Petrino than goes to Pittman? Um, that is a fascinating subplot, but because it's Arkansas and not much is expected of them this year, I think it's flown a little bit under the radar. But that's a weird deal that I wonder if we can truly get into it in a media days type of environment.
I would also like to, in the same way that you want Milrow kind of in a unfiltered setting,
Mhm.
I would like to ask Billy Napier, like, hey, bro, do you feel your seat getting hot? Is it on fire yet? Like, how do you feel? Like, you have kind of put yourself in this position, and then the SEC did you no favors with the schedule. Like, how do you feel about going into this season? Because like they're still doing pretty well on the recruiting trail. Like one of the players that decommitted from Alabama recently, Miles Johnson, 4-star linebacker, he recently just committed to Florida. So like they're still cooking off the field.
Yeah.
Can they, hey buddy, how you feeling about the what this season is going to bring? Like I'm sure somebody will ask a variation of that question and he'll give a typical coach speak answer, but like in an honest moment, like I would like to know how that dude is feeling going into this year.
Like, do you have a win? Do you have a schedule that allows you to keep your job next year? Has it been communicated to you what the win total expectation is? Because based on that schedule, if he's in a bowl game, I think he could argue he did a really good job.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, Billy's a tough nut to crack. I really like him, but he's very Saban like. He's very laser focused. He's not going to give in. But yeah, and that hot seat it was cooking before we got out of last year, and then the Rashada thing on top of it. That's the question you'd love to ask that he won't answer. Is both from Kirby and from Billy. Like, what's the deal with that? Like, what'd you know? When did you know it? What'd you say? All of those things because they won't answer it in media days. There's a chance they might have to answer it in a courtroom.
My favorite detail, because it was CBS Sports, John Talty, formerly of this wonderful website, who I think he broke the story.
Yeah, he was among
the
group that broke it.
Yeah, there was a collection of people. The detail in Talty's story specifically was that Rashada asked for Kirby, like, hey, can I do this? And Kirby's like, yeah, for sure, go ahead. Like, I think the way he phrased it was like he got Kirby's blessing.
Yeah.
And that just made me bust out. I was just like, like that's going to make the cocktail party all the more interesting this year.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of animosity there. And again, these are two guys who in theory should be friends because they were both at Alabama at the same time. They both kind of have that same personality. Yeah, I don't know if it's a thing that they just are like, man, it's all in the game. It is what it is. And I don't think they're going. You almost wish they were going the same day so they could cross paths and have to talk about it.
All right, a couple more quick questions to wrap up, and then we'll get out of here. These two are Alabama related. Which Alabama player do you think will be a surprise addition to the media's preseason All SEC team?
Well, that's a good question. I wonder if Roberts gets a bump based off the EA Sports thing, maybe, and people coming around to the understanding that this guy can really play. The interesting one to me is I think the national media knows Parker Brailsford from being a freshman All American. Do they know / project a Jeremy Bernard to be a guy? Because I think he's going to be among the top 6 receivers in the SEC. I think he has a chance to be that good. But will he be in that first, second team grouping? I have a feeling he won't. But I wonder if there's been enough buzz that's been created there that maybe he lands in that mix.
I think another surprise addition, and maybe this is more a surprise for like the league outlet. Like I'm thinking of like Keon Sabb, I think could potentially be a surprise like on the third team. I also think, and we've given a lot of love to Tim Keenan on this show and on our website. Jaheim Otis, I think could also, I don't know if he's a surprise ad because the last question I had for you is who would be a surprise left off of the preseason All SEC teams. And so I can't decide whether like Otis, who was very good as a freshman, struggled with injury last year. I don't know if he would be a surprise ad or a surprise, he got left off the team.
The surprise left off the team one to me, most likely, maybe Jahad Campbell, just because I think he's a really good player.
He's a very good player.
Yeah, he's a very good player. He's got the build that projects. He's got all of those things. But I don't know if he's well known enough to be on enough ballots at this point where he's first, second team. Maybe he sneaks in third team, but I could also see him left off. And I would put him up there, obviously, but there's that piece of it. I think he was left off Phil Steele's All SEC, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So
Did you post that on the board? I thought that was interesting that he wasn't at least on like third team.
Yeah, and I get it. It's 1 year of production, I guess, and really didn't kind of came on a little bit later because of an injury.
Yeah, it was really kind of a half year of production, right? Because he really didn't get a lot of snaps until I think it was like Lawson got hurt midway through the year, so they threw Campbell in there because he had switched positions, right? He joined the program as an edge, and then they saw that like, oh, like this dude can do Tresman Marshall's job better than Tresman Marshall can, and so by the time you get to, Auburn, like Lawson, Campbell are your starters. So yeah, I'm sure the lack of early season production, and unless you were really following Alabama last year, you probably, like, oh, who's this guy next to Lawson? We don't know.
Yeah, I could easily see him left off. It'll be weird if he's on. And how do people feel about Caden Proctor? I don't know if he should be on there, where he should be on there. I don't really know if he's a surprise if he's off or if he's on, but like I think it depends on when the SEC media caught him in his progression. If you're a Auburn beat writer or you're a Georgia beat writer, you're like, that dude's a stud. He's first team All SEC. If you were at Tennessee or wherever early in the season where he might have struggled, you're going to have a different feeling about it because he changed dramatically over the course of the year. And were you influenced by a Rose Bowl where he didn't play his best, but oh, by the way, had a torn ligament in his ankle? So there's a reason for that. So
the other thing too is the SEC is kind of sneaky deep at left tackle, right? You got Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks from Texas, he's back. So is Proctor the third best left tackle? I don't know. Maybe that's one of those like rotating positions where it's like, what's the flavor of the week?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And it's weird because I think everybody looks at him and goes, that's an NFL first round pick. It's just a matter of, is he going to rise to that level this year, next year, the year after that? We don't know. But there's that understanding. So do you project him as a first team All SEC, or do you leave him off throughout? I think there's going to be a wide range on Proctor.
Yeah. Well, and the Texas media contingent, for example, may leave him off, whereas the Georgia media contingent may put him on.
He was the highest rated offensive lineman in that game.
Yeah. So, the version of Caden Proctor that Georgia saw, that Auburn saw, that Kentucky saw, significantly different from the Caden Proctor that Texas saw, that Ole Miss saw, that Arkansas saw, right? So it's like, where do all of the votes land? I don't know.
And that's why the same similar thing with Jahad Campbell, where it's like, if you didn't catch him early in the year, maybe you're like, what are we even talking about here? But if you saw him late, you're like, if you're Tennessee and you're like, yeah, that dude's first team All SEC. He's a stud. Yeah, so that's what's unique about these. When it's not a player like a Milroe who everybody's going to know by the end of the year, you can have a little bit of surprises, I guess, good or bad. I wonder if Graham Nicholson, because he's new, might be. I mean, he should be first team. He won the Blue Groza, and I would not be surprised if he's second or third team. Like, I mean, because people aren't going to know who he is in the SEC. I think that may be another one. I think you talked about the defensive tackles. Sab, I think, is another one that I think here we know he's good enough to be in that mix. Other than that, I don't think there's the interesting one. And we talked about this on the previous pod in the week is how many people know, and this is more maybe a surprise that they're on, depending on what perspective you look at it, is Justice Haynes in that mix? Because I think everybody knows what he's capable of, and if you remove a Roydell Williams and there's snaps there, do you think he can be one of the best, top 6 running backs in the SEC? I certainly do.
So I think he can, but I guess if any of Alabama's running backs are left off, not a lot of production, literally 0 starts out of that running back room. As high as we are on those guys, no starting experience. Jam Miller's really the only one that has gotten like extended playing time. And even then it was spread out over a bunch of games last year. I would not be shocked if one of them, whether it's Haynes or Miller, is on third team or even left off completely, just because there could be other productive back, like Logan Diggs, for example, from LSU to Ole Miss. He's a really good back. Texas, I feel like, had a freshman last year. I forget his name. Was it Baxter? He was really good.
Yeah,
He'll probably be up there.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So ETN at Georgia, like there's,
So good.
There's enough of really good players. If they are on it might be third team, or if they get left off, like that one probably wouldn't bother me too much. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't either way, but it's still, again, we're in that weird part of the year where you're projecting these guys. Right. And I think nobody would be surprised if Justice is among that group, top 5 running back in the SEC by the time the year's over. But is his name recognition enough at this point to merit it? I don't know. Because you will see him on some preseason All SEC lists online. You'll see that, but I don't know if we'll see it from the media at large.
Yeah. That's all we've got today, Alex. The next time we talk will be next week in Dallas at SEC Media Days. We've got a couple of shows planned for next week. Second show this week. I thought the two shows in 1 week went well to start with. We're still working our way into in-season shape, right? This is still kind of our preseason a little bit. So we've got a few more weeks to kind of work our way into shape before we attempt the 3-show-a-week routine. But 2 shows a week this week, I thought it went pretty well so far.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't lose my voice, so we're good.
We'll be back next week, like I said, at SEC Media Days in Dallas. We're planning 2 more podcasts next week. One early in the week where my hope and my plan is to discuss the quarterbacks around the SEC. We'll have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation on those guys. And then another one later in the week where we are going to recap Alabama's day at SEC Media Days. In the meantime, though, be sure to rate and review the show wherever you listen to your podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, even our Bama 247 YouTube page. Subscribe to Bama 247 and 247 Sports. You can get 50% off an annual VIP membership, guys. That's a year's worth of Bama 247 and 247 Sports coverage for less than $5. You should absolutely cash in on that special, especially with SEC Media Days and Fall Camp right around the corner. I put a link to that in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you guys for listening. We'll talk to you all again soon.